It's naughty, sexy, sleazy 1976. A year of turmoil on TV, of X-rated scandal,
That's shocking now, isn't it?
and music legends unafraid to ruffle feathers.
That made enormous waves around the world.
Cheats get rumbled,
He is like Inspector Gadget. I don't know how he didn't realize at some point he would be caught.
comedy goes too far,
It makes you want to jump on a chair and scream.
and who could we really trust?
My husband didn't corrupt the police, they corrupted him.
Come back with me to 76 to relive the controversial events that got Britain gasping.
They were trying to kill probably the most famous person on earth.
Standing on a stage and lauding Enoch Powell.
I should have killed him when I had the chance.
There was something Shakespearean about it. As Carnival turns into chaos,
An explosion of a kind that hasn't been seen in this country before.
a royal fairy tale ends.
I'm in no way bitter about it.
And there's both filth and fury as punk is unleashed.
They were banned from almost everywhere they were supposed to play.
So strap in tight, because if you want outrage, shock and scandal, it's all here.
I think they're making fun of us.
These are the most extraordinary events in TV, film, show business and politics that were, controversially, 1976. It's the year Concorde flew champagne-quaffing passengers to America for the first time. A new start-up computer outfit opened for business in California, while a British TV icon was about to come crashing down.
I loved Fanny Craddock.
She is a one-woman whirlwind.
And I go on working at full speed until I get this really smooth face.
She was quite bustly with those weird eyebrows that seemed to be quite high and almost permanently surprised.
Everything in life is so easy when you know the way. It's just a question of the pleasure that I get selfishly out of sharing the ways of the things I've happened to discover with you.
Slightly scarier than Gordon Ramsay, Fanny had ruled the kitchen since the 1950s.
You must press your spoon onto the base of the pan.
Warm and giving.
And it would be soggy and disgusting if you didn't get it very thick.
She really wasn't. More dictatorial and terrifying.
This is the rule for perfection.
She quite often got to grips with quite a big bird, didn't she? She was quite a fan of things like a large turkey.
And then you begin the process of lubricating the dry bird.
That she would rather roughly manhandle.
Right up.
There's an image that'll stay with you. For over 20 years, Fanny was the harridan of the hob, but we loved her for it. Then, in November 1976, she overcooked her opinions, and the rest is history.
We're in one of the great kitchens of the world, the Dorchester Hotel in London. All kinds of distinguished gentlemen and elegant ladies expecting the most magnificent three-course lunch. And I hope they don't know who's in charge, because it's not the normal head chef. It's a farmer's wife from Devon.
In this early reality show, The Big Time, amateur cook Gwen Troke was about to serve the meal of her life. Seafood cocktail, duck with a bramble sauce, finished off with a coffee pudding. How 70s. But it was when Fanny got involved the trouble started.
I would never serve a seafood cocktail before a duck. Never in a million years.
This poor woman, Fanny Craddock, spends minutes, which seem like hours, just knocking her down, down, down.
Think of the poor stomach.
Completely dissing this beautiful menu that poor Gwen Troke has made.
What is the sauce of the duck?
Blackberry.
With duck.
Heavens above! A bramble sauce with duck.
And then straight into the duck.
I love the way that she just holds her head and just, she's feeling the migraine from the stress of it.
There are withering looks, there are the sighs.
There was a lot of widened eyeballs from Fanny.
She reduces that woman almost to tears about her coffee pudding.
But, sweetie, it's too sickly after duck. The taste buds, when they've had a rich duck, which is one of the richest dishes in the world, are totally exhausted. So the job of the menu maker is to revive the taste buds.
In those 6 minutes, she brought herself down by being a snob.
So, my friends, I love it.
Yes, but they're not professionals, and you're coming into the jungle.
That is what's now known as a massive misstep. The UK was furious. Fanny apologised to Gwen, but the damage was done, and 2 weeks later, the BBC showed her the door and she never presented for them again. But how does history judge her?
In a way, though, Fanny's right. It was too heavy. It would be far better to have a sorbet afterwards, or a cheese board.
Next on our menu of controversies served up in 1976, it's the ITV drama that had the nation salivating.
You can't underestimate how shocking this series was.
It was naughty, more than naughty.
Held Britain absolutely entranced.
Bouquet of Barbed Wire was the curtain-twitching tale of the apparently respectable Manson family.
It was a middle-class family in absolute meltdown.
OK, so we have Prue and Gavin, happy newlyweds.
Haven't you forgotten something?
No?
But for how long?
Don't think so.
You're supposed to carry me over the threshold.
You crazy? A great lump like you.
And whose fault's that?
Meanwhile, Prue's father was having an affair with his secretary. Viewers were outraged, and there was more to come, when Gavin shockingly began an affair with his new wife's mother. Yes, behind Prue's back, her mum was bedding her own daughter's husband. I do hope you're keeping up.
I had no idea what it was about, apart from the fact it was like the sauciest, raunchiest thing that we'd ever seen on television.
It became must-see TV, especially for those who really shouldn't have been watching.
The thing about television in those days, if something was controversial when you're a 15-year-old, 16-year-old lad, you watched it.
And everyone, in that way, when you don't quite understand something and you're like in the playground, it's like, oh, you're going to watch this tonight.
But my grandmother, she let us stay up till 10 o'clock when we stayed with her, and she loved Bouquet of Barbed Wire.
There was kind of hints at nudity all the way through. There were loads of shots which probably the grown-ups were like, oh, it's a bit saucy. For us as children, we were like, oh, she's showing her back.
But it wasn't all that bare flesh that really set tongues wagging. Most shocking of all was the suggestion of a hugely taboo subject, incest.
There are hints of darkness in the father's obsessive love of his daughter.
Hello, Daddy. It's this really odd, controlling relationship.
You still sulking about that weekend?
I'm not sulking. I just think you were horrible to Gavin, that's all, and I'm very upset.
He doesn't like Prue's husband. And even the smallest things, like Gavin putting suntan oil on Prue, the dad is looking on. Don't you touch my girl. There's an underlying sense of sex going on.
Bye, Daddy.
But it's father and daughter.
Take care.
I will. See you soon.
And it's horrible, it's dark.
But that didn't stop viewers lapping it up.
Did you get any criticisms or...?
Oh, yes, the critics were very divided about it, and I got some funny letters.
What sort of letters?
Oh, one classic was, stop funneling this filth into our homes. But don't tell me to switch off, because I've just bought a brand new television. I intend to watch it.
Especially shocking today is the very 1976 approach to domestic violence.
You can say what you like to your dad, that's up to you. But you're not going to tell your mother. Because if you do, I'll knock your head off.
There's really a strong strain in it, particularly given it's written by a woman, of women really don't mind being knocked about a bit.
Mummy, did you know Daddy's been screwing his secretary in our flat while we were away?
The violence and its aftermath really tell us something about attitudes back then.
No one even thinks of going to the police. No one even... The doctor sort of says, oh, you'll be all right. That casual kind of misogyny is really dark now.
Come on, it's not as bad as all that. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Hurt like hell at the time, of course. I don't think you realised how strong you are. But it served me right.
Is then suggested that Prue asked him to beat her up.
Please.
What?
Kiss. Kiss and make up.
I wonder now how that would play out, whether you'd really be allowed to show it in that way.
Once you've caught your breath after that, we've more jaw-dropping TV from '76.
It was profoundly moving.
Pop's Mr. Sexy springs a surprise, while a British musical icon risks everything. We're diving back into the controversies that had tongues wagging in 1976. And that year, the revelations in a compelling TV documentary had us gasping.
Death in the West was an investigative journalist report into the effects of smoking on the human lung. And it showed cowboys who had smoked heavily and the effects on their health.
This is Marlboro country, the American West, setting for the most successful cigarette advertising campaign ever. Marlboro, the biggest selling cigarette in history, is manufactured by Philip Morris, one of the richest and fastest growing cigarette companies in the world.
What made it so good and so persuasive was that they matched the advertising films of Marlboro, and that was all about cowboys, healthy, tough, rugged cowboys, with some terrible shots of dying real cowboys.
These are the Marlboro men, real cowboys, rugged symbols of virility, health, and independence. Bob Julian and his brother are real cowboys too, born and bred in Wyoming. But for Bob, the last roundup will soon be over.
They had these cowboys who'd all smoked, who were all in various stages of ill health.
I started smoking when I was a kid, following these cowboys and bronc busters, and thought to be a man, you had to have a cigarette in your mouth. And it took me years to really discover that all I got out of it was lung cancer. I'm just going to die a young man.
There was an image of a cowboy filmed from far away, and from far away, it is the image of the cool Marlboro Man cowboy. And then as the camera come in, you see that he's got emphysema and now he's breathing through a tube.
For 10 years, 64-year-old John Holmes has been crippled.
That visual told the whole story.
The programme intercut the human stories of the stricken cowboys with a defence of the tobacco industry from Philip Morris executives.
Anything can be considered harmful. Applesauce is harmful if you get too much of it.
I don't think many people are dying from applesauce.
It was the first time that the tobacco companies, which had been denying any correlation between cigarette use and cancer or illness of any sort, it's the first time they admitted that there was a link.
Now we discover there are all kinds of things that are unhealthy.
Of which cigarettes, they say, are one of them.
Yeah, cigarettes are one. So what are we to do? Stop living? The best way to avoid dying is not to be born, you know.
There was a very defined way of saying it, but it still was an admission.
When the documentary aired on ITV in September 1976, at a time when almost half the UK's male population smoked, 12 million viewers were gripped by the human stories being told.
What we were watching is an industry that is indefensible, trying to defend itself. And it was profoundly moving and a brilliant piece of scientific research.
I've always been extremely healthy all my life until this cancer hit me.
Less impressed was the tobacco company, who went straight to the courts to try to put the genie back into the bottle.
Philip Morris then took aggressive legal action against Thames Television, who finally agreed, all right, they wouldn't ever play the programme again.
But then in the 1980s, a leaked copy emerged.
Death in the West is a powerful British documentary that the makers of Marlboro cigarettes didn't want you to see.
Several US TV companies decided to broadcast the controversial programme that had by then become the stuff of legend.
The film is about the real Marlboro Man, not the mythical one of advertising fame.
Few TV programmes really change opinions, but this is an exception, as a watershed moment in our realisation about the true danger of smoking.
Television at its best holds people to account. It was impossible to ignore.
TV was aflame with argument in 1976, and the year saw two British musical legends take a controversial stand.
I believe homosexual practices are wrong.
Now, coming out is a time for celebration. Then, it was a time for fear.
Homosexuality was seen as a word that, well, wasn't even said. It was whispered. It was him at the end of the road.
We kept it very, very secret.
But in 1976, the gay community found support from two British musical icons. The first to make a stand came as a huge surprise to many.
There's an artist that I really don't think gets the credit he deserves for breaking down barriers and taboo subjects, and that's Rod Stewart.
To most people, Rod Stewart's almost like the epitome of the macho, heterosexual, beer-drinking man.
No, I don't usually drink the champagne. It gives me indigestion. It's me heartburn. I go in for a pint of red myself.
He had that very masculine ladies' man element to him at that point.
I don't know if I should like this or not, because, you know, you just didn't really know much about it.
You have to remember that it's a song from, you know, nearly 5 decades ago, and I think the way in which LGBTQ+ people were represented or talked about or were perceived were very different to where they are today.
For many, homosexuality is sometimes thought of as a disease, an aberration, an abnormality, even a perversion.
The great thing about going on social media now and being able to watch clips of Rod Stewart performing that song.
Hello, London Gay Switchboard. Can I help you?
When you read the comments, this changed my life. This is the first time that I had the courage to tell my parents I was gay.
It's just that our conditioning was so strong that we felt this was just something which we couldn't talk about because it was wrong.
Thank you, Rod, for doing this. My parents were a lot more sympathetic because you were singing about such a taboo subject at the time.
And thanks to that song, another Georgie felt empowered to face the 70s and 80s.
My mum bought it for me when I was a kid, and she put it in my sock drawer in a brown paper bag to let me know she knew what was going on.
Just explain that a little bit.
Well, she used to say I was theatrical, you know, highly strong and theatrical. So it was their way of saying, I know what you are, I love you, is a great song. And of course, I love that song, so that's a very powerful song.
Round of applause for Mum. Yeah. Well done, Mum.
But Rod wasn't the only musical giant to speak out that year. Another larger-than-life star who'd emerged in the glam era had plenty to say too.
In the 70s, you know, we'd had glam rock and men wearing makeup.
Playing with gender roles had been at the heart of glam.
I just like startling people.
You had Bowie dressed up as a woman, this spaceman creature, you had T-Rex, you had all these sort of things. And then you had Elton John, who again was coming out all dressed up, you know, like Rocket Man.
The glasses, the outfit, it is what it is. I would have guessed it said exactly what it did on the tin.
In 76, few people equated on-stage flamboyance with off-stage sexuality. Back in those days, it was all just showbiz.
In hindsight, it's very easy to say, well, he was enormously camp. 2 + 2 equals. But at the time, camp is part of performance. It's part of rock and roll. And so to be that flamboyant figure is accepted, and people might think you go back to your wife and kids.
But then Elton turned the controversy dial up to 11 and shocked the entire world.
In August 1976, Elton John gives an interview to Rolling Stone in which he just very matter-of-factly drops in that he's bisexual.
And people were surprised by that. It shouldn't really make news. It's almost like Tony Benn saying, I'm a politician.
Elton, of course, was wanting to be truthful. And fair enough, you know, why should you live a lie?
The worry was that Elton's honesty would affect record sales.
Oh, my God, what's he said? Is this all going to be dreadful? Is it all going to backfire?
And the press had a field day.
When you have so much homophobia within the music industry and society at large still, newspapers could seize on a story.
The tabloid reaction was pretty shocked, really. I mean, they were going, oh, my God. It was really a big story. If it had been somebody minor in a band that had a couple of hit records, people wouldn't have taken any notice. But he was a huge star and a huge international star. So that made enormous waves around the world.
This has always been seen as this ruined Elton John's career in America, that after that it's all downhill for almost 10 years. And that may well have been the case.
America wasn't ready for a bisexual rock hero. But Britain stuck by our Rocket Man, and unthinkably in '76, he's now Sir Elton, and arguably the most famous gay man in the world.
I'm amazed that anyone was amazed, frankly.
To us, it's no surprise, but it was daring at the time.
It takes people making that brave step in the past so that I can sit here in a hat made of pretend hair and a sparkly dress 50 years in the future. So, thanks, Elton.
We've got more controversies on the way, with a princess getting frisky with her toy boy.
How dare she have an affair?
The Royal Navy defending our right to cotton chips.
We're Britain. Don't be ridiculous. Give us the fish.
And some policemen getting their hands very dirty.
Where you get vast sums of money being earned, you'll always find corruption.
We're looking back at the controversies that shaped 1976. At times, it felt like society itself was crumbling. As British forces buckled under pressure, discrimination reached boiling point on our streets, and even royalty came under threat as Princess Margaret's marriage publicly fell apart.
In the 70s, a royal divorce would be a huge scandal, really.
I did a lot of royal reporting over the years, and the interest in the Queen's younger sister was colossal, especially her private life.
She wasn't your conventional royal, and I think that's what people were attracted to. She was quite an avant-garde sort of character.
Princess Margaret was just a stunning woman. She was definitely with the fashion.
She wasn't living by anybody's standards. She used to drive around London in a Mini. She had very exotic friends from all walks of life. She was a rather beautiful princess who was almost like a Hollywood film star.
Yes, Princess Margaret was the rock and roll royal, and in 1960 she married a fellow party animal, Anthony Armstrong Jones, who would become Lord Snowdon. Their wedding was a huge TV event.
He was this handsome photographer, and, you know, he certainly swept her off her feet.
Lord Snowdon and Princess Margaret, wow. What a ball of fire, huh? I'm telling you, I mean, the two of them together, I wouldn't mind going to a party with them.
They were the very posh and becks of their day, the world's dream couple. But in private, there was trouble in paradise.
It wasn't gonna last forever because they both had single lives outside of marriage.
Pretty soon they were having affairs.
The rumours of unhappiness started filtering down to the press, whom the palace calls the reptiles.
In February '76, 45-year-old Princess Margaret was caught cavorting with gardener and journalist Roddy Llewellyn. And cue the outrage, he was only 28.
What changed everything was when a photograph was taken of the two of them in Mustique, and it was published in the News of the World. This story had everything: a princess involved with a younger man, tropical island, and photographs to prove it. And it did actually cause huge shock.
How dare she have an affair, and even worse, get caught having this affair. And oh my gosh, shocker, the boy is 17 years younger than her. You had the media calling her a cradle snatcher.
She was labelled this floozy.
You had MPs coming out calling her a royal parasite.
But Princess Margaret's crisis quickly became her husband's opportunity, and he grabbed it.
Can you say that you will be going back to your wife?
But I'm not making any comment about my private life at all.
That gave Snowdon, who was himself having an affair, the opportunity to sort of get out of the marriage that was very unhappy.
I'm in no way bitter about it.
I still don't think, actually, that she was keen to get divorced, but there was really no choice.
This will be the closest the British throne has ever come to the full legal breakup of a marriage.
Royal divorces are almost common these days, Back then, the breakdown of a senior royal marriage was end-of-days stuff. The monarchy would never be seen in the same way again. And it wasn't just the royal family in turmoil during the seismic year of 1976. The nation was actually embroiled in a hugely controversial war. We'd been at loggerheads with Iceland for decades.
At any one time, about 1,000 men on 3 frigates, 4 civilian support vessels, and a naval supply ship are ranged against Iceland's gunboats.
And although Britain had long been a world-famous marine power, in '76, this seafaring isle suffered an inglorious defeat over fish.
I do remember at the time thinking, hold up, we're involved in something called the Cod Wars against Iceland, and we're losing.
With only 3 weeks to go before Christmas, a sad homecoming for the first of the British trawlers ordered to leave Icelandic waters.
They were our enemy back then, briefly, because, without going into all the ins and outs of it, they'd extended, I think, their territorial waters where they could fish, and we were angry about this.
What we're doing is protecting trawlers on the high seas in international waters, which is our duty.
The long and short of it was, the British fishing industry thought it had the right to fish in other countries' waters. Other countries, namely Iceland, disagreed, and British jobs were threatened.
Most of them believe it's just going to be signing on the dole.
Well, I think things are looking a bit grim, you know.
Some estimate as many as 12,000 jobs could be lost.
Blithely turning up to fish off Iceland's coast was tricky to justify. And it wasn't like Iceland had many other industries to fall back on.
Fish is the country's only natural resource.
We'd been nicking their fish for years. The Icelandic were saying, but this is our territory. They're our fish, leave them alone.
Britain was certainly in the wrong, and behind the scenes they knew perfectly well they were in the wrong.
It quickly got messy. Icelandic boats started cutting British nets. The Navy was sent to protect our trawlers. Then protests in Iceland turned violent.
I was very conscious as a reporter in Reykjavik, thinking, I hope they are not stupid enough in London to think that they can bully the Icelandic government and start a real war.
They claim that some species, including cod, are in danger of disappearing altogether because of overfishing.
But we're saying, we're Britain. Don't be ridiculous. Give us the fish. And so, you know, we felt entitled because we were the maritime superpower.
The frigates, with their heavier firepower, would dominate any shooting match with the gunboats.
But it soon became apparent that we weren't all that super or all that powerful.
Today came the first serious injury in the Cod War. A fisherman was badly hurt by trawl wires which whipped back across the deck after they'd been cut by an Icelandic gunboat.
I remember watching the news and there was this sort of argy-bargy of boats in the Icelandic Sea.
There have been countless confrontations between the ships of Britain and Iceland in the fishing grounds, and now Iceland has just announced that she's broken off diplomatic relations with Britain.
And we're being seen off by some blokes in bobble hats, you know, on a trawler. I mean, it really was about as low as Britain ever sunk.
Then in June 1976, a fishy peace broke out when Britain backed down.
I think, touch wood, that the Cod War is over, and a very good thing for both countries, too.
Iceland's Goliath had sent the British David packing.
It's been described as a sellout. I simply regard this as a practical solution to a problem that had become simply intolerable for both countries.
So, 5 decades on, is the controversy all water under the bridge?
If you go to Iceland now, there's still a little bit of lingering. I mean, I've interviewed Björk a few times. I wouldn't bring the Cod War up, you know what I mean? Don't mention the Cod War will be my philosophy to you still.
So, as the Navy took a battering on the high seas in '76, on the high streets, the London police came under fire, mixed up in a story that had it all. Pornography, bent coppers and wads of cash. Juicy or what?
It seemed that relations between some detectives and the vice captains of Soho had become too intimate.
The '70s was the decade when pawn shops really hit the streets. Everyone was at it.
We probably have bankers, judges, dockers, board workers, BBC Two engineers, everybody.
Your Nan probably called them dirty bookshops, and they were everywhere, but mainly in London's swinging Soho.
It doesn't worry me at all. I don't like to see it displayed too much.
In answer, the Metropolitan Police created the Obscene Publication Squad. To be clear, the idea wasn't to make obscene publications, but stop them.
Hello, can we see this flying squad, please?
The plan was that regular police raids would keep dodgy dealers off the streets.
A basement in Holborn where the Obscene Publications Squad stores £1 million worth of seized material.
Money talks. The more morally challenged members of the force started taking backhanders.
Much of the flying squad's work is triggered by tip-offs from the underworld. It can lead to a curiously dependent relationship between policeman and villain.
Right, thank you very much. I'll get police right along.
The flying squad rely 100% on information, and to do their job, they've got to associate and permanently associate with people of the criminal fraternity.
And therein lies the problem.
My second husband was in the Met and in the CID at the time. And talking about it much later, he would say to me, "You knew who the bad guys were." And he meant the bad guys within the police. You knew who they were. And they were criminals in police clothing.
One of the leading porn barons, James Humphreys, boasted that he had a number of Scotland Yard men in his pocket.
You've got two of the most extreme industries colliding, and people would be surprised by that, but actually it goes hand in hand.
They lived side by side with the villains who weren't paid that much. You know, porn, it would have seemed harmless.
It was alleged that hardcore pornographers were allowed to flourish and organise prostitution and protection rackets by systematically bribing detectives.
Within Soho, within certain parts of the Met area, that was run by the criminals with the police, as criminals taking money from them.
My husband didn't corrupt the police, they corrupted him. Where you get vast sums of money being earned on this illegal porn, you'll always find corruption.
I mean, it was money laundering, it was all sorts of things going on there, and turning a blind eye in return for backhanders. It was big, big money.
Some traders paid up to £8,000 for a so-called licence to operate without prosecution, and then handed over anything up to £1,000 a month to keep their protectors sweet.
How do you break that? It's not easy. And I think the way it was broken was by having some very determined people at the top that this had to stop.
I do not agree with police officers socialising in any way with criminals. This is wrong.
The force's anti-corruption unit, A10, set about finding bought-off bobbies. Years later, they'd inspire Line of Duty's AC-12.
The biggest single inquiry undertaken by A10 is still kept under lock and key. It concerns the allegations by the pornographer James Humphreys that he had 40 police officers in his pay.
When the extent of the corruption became clear, there was national outrage, as seen in this news report.
They shared out hundreds of pounds at weekly office parties in room 267, where the drink flowed. They even stored the seized pornography and then sold it back to the dealers for £400 a job lot. It was all part of the system.
I do remember being very shocked.
The whole grimy truth began to emerge. Some officers were up to their necks in it.
The former head of the pornography squad, Detective Chief Superintendent Bill Moody, was suspended from duty last June. Ken Drury, the then head of the flying squad, was shown to have shared his holiday in Cyprus with James Humphreys, the so-called Emperor of Porn, an ex-Dartmoor prisoner.
The whole House of Cards collapsed that February, when the arrests began.
Throughout the morning, cars brought the arrested men to Cannon Row police station. All the accused faced similar charges that they conspired to corruptly receive monies and other considerations from persons trading in pornography.
56 officers have been prosecuted for bribery and corruption, and 22 have been convicted.
It was horrible to read about, to see policemen being sent down, and to suspect that there were some who didn't get caught, or who managed to avoid justice.
Well, I've resigned for personal reasons. The Commissioner's accepted my resignation, that's all I'm prepared to say.
Senior detectives insisted that there were only a very few bad apples in their large barrel.
We grew up in the 70s of thinking, you know, If you can't trust the police, you can't trust anyone. And I think we learned, yeah, you can't trust anyone, mate.
Do you believe there are no honest policemen?
Oh, there must be. Oh, yes, certainly there are. I haven't met one yet, but there are.
1976 was a very controversial year for the Met. Still reeling from all the muckraking, they faced a very long, very hot summer that became a tinderbox. It ignited street violence after accusations of heavy-handed policing.
My memory of 1976, it was a very hot summer.
The whole country was baked. You know, the green of England was brown.
At the time, the summer of '76 was the hottest on record. Little did we know.
It was reported with complete hysteria. It was, ooh, what a scorcher, and all the sort of the sizzling headlines you'd get, and everyone was, oh, God.
Now we are saying, save water, we are going to need it.
Now familiar headlines like water shortages, crop failures, and wildfires started here.
Firemen from all over North Yorkshire have been at full stretch for 3 days, backed by the army from nearby Ripon.
In a time before climate crisis was understood, there was a bizarre side effect of the heat.
Do you know what I remember especially? Not just the heat, but the ladybirds.
While China and Italy were shaken by earthquakes, we fought ladybirds on the beaches and on the home front. With true British stoicism, we stood together against the multitude.
There was a swarm of ladybirds, and they would line the pavements, and you had to walk on the ladybirds. It was unbelievable.
The high temperatures allowed these cold-blooded creatures to move a little faster and a little further in search of food.
People were just covered with it in clouds of and crunching them underfoot, and it was bizarre.
But by late summer, the oppressive blanket of heat started to make tempers flare and tensions rise.
The summer of '76 was too hot. It was too hot and too prolonged as well, you know. It was, when is it going to rain? When is it going to cool down?
Brigade chiefs say the fire won't be out completely until there's at least 3 days of rain.
That bank holiday weekend celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Notting Hill Carnival. Originally created as a children's event to help with intercultural inclusion, it had become a huge Caribbean-style party.
When I first used to go to Carnival, I used to be able to walk quite freely from one street to the next. We'd all be enjoying ourselves, having a roti, having chicken and rice. We didn't have any problems as long as the police weren't there.
You go from one area to another, you'll be accompanied by police.
What happens on a carnival day depends on how sensitive the policeman in charge is. Last year there were 60 people policing 250,000 people, and you know there was not one single incident of violence recorded anywhere.
But in 1976, those 60 officers became 1,500. It was a controversial decision that was to turn Carnival into chaos after igniting simmering resentments.
If we didn't have that number of policemen, we couldn't control the streets.
As soon as you saw the policemen start blocking roads, that's when the problem started.
If there's a arrest on Carnival Day, then it's going to be an explosion of a kind that hasn't been seen in this country before.
On the 30th of August, that grim prediction came to pass.
Police officers were responding to alleged pickpocketers, and then onlookers now got involved to defend those alleged pickpocketers.
5 policemen are sent into the crowd. Immediately, they're hemmed in against a wall.
And then more police came and got involved in that.
A bottle is thrown, then a brick.
As the hot summer had stretched on, parts of London had become a pressure cooker ready to blow, with the Afro-Caribbean community ever more resentful of what they saw as heavy-handed policing.
In the 1970s, my dad would routinely get picked up by the police, thrown in the back of a police van, thrown in a jail cell overnight for no reason other than being black or for having dreadlocks. There's never really been a great time for race relations between the police and the black community, but that era was the nadir of those relations.
You are not telling me what to do.
And it could well be that on that baking hot day, it was the final flashpoint.
The police presence created this sort of feeling of uneasiness.
It's almost like lighting the blue touch paper in a way.
And it was the biggest riot that anyone had ever seen in this country for some considerable time.
What followed were some of the most shocking scenes of violence witnessed in the capital for decades.
I think it was something like 100 police got injured. They were throwing bricks, petrol bombs, you know, setting fire to vehicles.
My mum and dad were at the Notting Hill Carnival in 1976, and my mum said that they ended up running away from bricks being chucked everywhere in the underpass. Not exactly fond memories, because that's not really a carnival, is it?
More scandals of 76 on the way, including art or bricks. You decide.
I think they're making fun of us.
And one Olympian thinks rules are for fools.
The most bonkers cheating scandal.
We're back in 1976, revisiting the controversies that still fascinate us in the 21st century. In 76, modern art was not something you'd expect to make the headlines. But that's exactly what happened in February that year. Although not necessarily in a good way.
First on BBC One, John Craven's News Round.
The Tate Art Gallery in London hit the headlines today when it was revealed that they'd paid a lot of money for a pile of old bricks.
I remember my mum getting slightly upset. A pile of bleeding bricks, I think was the slightly edited version of what she said. A pile of bleeding bricks.
There are 120 of them arranged, as you can see, in a nice, neat pile. And they're a sculpture.
But I remember at the time consciously saying to her, and being as pretentious as I possibly could, no, Mum, it's an important statement of minimalism.
All the fuss was over a piece by conceptual artist Carl Andre called Equivalent 8.
They're probably the most expensive bricks in the world.
But which might have been equally well described as some house bricks laid out neatly.
I like the fact that it's called Equivalent 8, because if it had been called Some Bricks, I don't think that the Tate would have bought it.
The Tate is coy about the price they paid. But was it a bargain?
I wouldn't say that, and I dare say many people would think they want a bargain at any price. But I think we're constantly in this situation where we have to try to judge how much should we spend, how much do we need this, how much is it going to be significant in the future.
What do you think of the bricks?
Well, I'm entirely in favour of the purchase because, in fact, it was I who purchased them.
Ordinary household bricks cost about £50 per 1,000. But Carl Andre, an American railwayman turned sculptor, put a price tag of £4,000 on his bricks and the simple design to stack them in 2 layers.
There was a big kerfuffle.
It's a pile of bricks.
I guess 1976, Britain's pretty skint. You know, this is not a glamorous period of time. This is strikes and power cuts and all of that.
We're dealing with a right to work, and we want that right to work.
And, you know, we went and spent a chunk of the nation's money on a pile of old bricks. We could have bought a lot of luncheon vouchers for that.
The Tate's brickies laid out the 120 fire bricks in the rectangular pattern decreed by the sculptor. Those in the know, even those who aren't, classify it as low sculpture.
Low sculpture, high price. And the fact it was paid for with public money got the press hot under the collar. But what do we think now?
Personally, I've always thought they were rather good. I mean, it is minimalism. It was one of the big art movements of that period of time.
When the bricks came to the Tate Modern, I thought, this is it. This is the lowest of low. And I just don't understand it. It was like looking at a sort of unmade home.
I think they're making fun of us.
Where the whole thing went wrong, I think, when the Tate bought their piece, they bought only one of the 8 equivalents. If they bought all 8, then the presentation of Equivalent 8 would be perfectly logical, even to people who hated it and wanted to write things in newspapers about what a load of bricks.
When you have these modern art is rubbish, it's terrible, people should just do vases. When you have that argument, automatically I will always be on the side of the modern art people, because you don't want to be that person who goes, oh, it's rubbish, I could do that. But having said that, compared to Damien Hirst or Tracy Emin, it is boring. It is just some bricks.
In some ways, I think the kerfuffle about the bricks was the first in a sort of an annual jamboree of let's all laugh at modern art. You know, we've had Tracy Emin's Unmade Bed, we've had Raw Sharks with Damien Hirst in formaldehyde. I think most people these days can sort of see that modern art, you don't have to like it, but it's interesting, it's exciting, it's different. Whereas certainly back then, most of the nation would be appalled at the idea that we'd spent, you know, any money whatsoever on something that wasn't by Rembrandt.
And while the art world was reeling in 1976, in sport that year, the Olympic ideals took a battering too, at the sneaky hands of a Soviet athlete who didn't play by the rules.
This was possibly the most bonkers cheating scandal. All of our current cheats are amateurs compared to Boris Olashenko.
Boris Olashenko was a very successful and well-garlanded athlete performing in the modern pentathlon.
So let's go back to the 1976 Montreal Olympics and the modern pentathlon. At the end of the first event, show jumping, the USSR found themselves trailing in fourth behind their British rivals. Next up was fencing, where Boris was about to go on guard against our very own Jim Fox.
Fox, like Boris Olashenko, he had a lot to gain and a lot to lose from this match.
Boris just had to win, so he harnessed the power of technology to help, only not very high tech.
He altered his sword and created some kind of a gadget in it that even if he didn't touch the person who he was dueling against, the computer would record that he did.
It was a bit like a magic wand. You just waved it in the direction of your opponent and it went beep.
This was such an infamous event that it garnered the era's most prestigious honour, a full blow-by-blow reconstruction on Blue Peter, where true Brit Jim revealed all of the Soviet skullduggery.
We're all connected up. This is like a light switch at the end, and when it's depressed against your opponent, he causes the light to go on.
Yeah.
In the case of Olashenko, we suspected that he had a suspect weapon. And what happened is we both fenced out of distance. It's about like this. Or I fenced out of distance with Olashenko. I jumped in very quickly to draw a stop-it, which is almost committing suicide.
Yeah.
He's left-handed, as is Peter. The stop-it came out, I was ready, rocked back, and at this point, the light went off. So
and he hadn't even touched you?
Hadn't even touched me. He had an illegal mechanism in the handle.
I love his innovation.
Now, if you bring the camera in over the top, we've, due to courtesy of the Remy workshops, we put a micro switch in here. If you look very, very carefully, you can see a little white dot. When I press that dot, that causes the light to go on to the box. His was much more sophisticated. It was actually in the handle and covered over by a leather binding. You couldn't see it.
Oh, very cunning, though, isn't it?
He is like Inspector Gadget. I don't know how he didn't realize at some point he would be caught.
So I immediately asked the president to check the weapon, which Boris said, well, no, Jimmy, I'll change it.
But upstanding British Army officer Jim was having none of it and called out the Soviet swindler.
Boris used the defense that all 14-year-olds use when they're caught with a packet of cigarettes. That's not mine, it's for someone else. But he was the only left-handed fencer, and the épée was for a left-handed fencer. So who else's could it have been? Boris became known as Dishonest Boris because of it.
Well, what happened to Boris Olashenko then after that?
Well, it's terrible, really, that sport can do that, but he was going back to be a lieutenant colonel. He was a major in the army. When he got home, they stripped him of all his sports titles and everything, and he's now a taxi driver again.
Wouldn't want to be in Boris Olashenko's taxi because you can bet he's fiddled with the meter. And you're like, why is it 20 quid? It's meant to be 7. He's like, look, it's the meter.
Next, for your evening's entertainment, more good, clean family fun.
I must draw the child from the Queen of Heaven's womb and swallow it whole.
The devil himself makes an appearance.
Which one will it be?
And heaven forbid, some badly dressed boys say some very rude words. We're reliving the most outrageous controversies of 1976 and heading back to the small screen for a big shocker.
It was a time when drama was much more permissive than it is now. The makers of drama were prepared to offend people.
And incest.
Germanicus is dead.
Now, I was familiar with the I, Claudius, Robert Graves books, but to see them on the screen was fabulous.
Oh, nothing stands now between Rome and her imperial destiny.
There was something Shakespearean about it. There were wonderful actors. Derek Jacobi was amazing, doing his sort of Claudius stutter.
If he's tried in the Senate by him, Hyperius will be on trial too.
How did he keep that up?
Of course, good writing, really good direction, and all under the amazing kind of the ballet of the multi-camera videotape drama.
You felt that the actors actually caught exactly what these great figures from history were really like.
They say that he has little girls running around the gardens like wood nymphs, naked.
Along with the brilliant script and acting, people tuned in.
Perversity of that Roman imperial culture. That's the subject of Graves's book. With the violence and the incest, and all of that is there in the story.
Is that man your lover?
No, of course not.
I don't like him. He's no business in your bedroom. I won't allow it when I'm emperor.
One controversial plot twist surrounded the relationship of Christopher Biggins as Nero
No.
with his mother, Agrippina.
I won't see him here again.
That's his mum.
Mother knows how her baby feels.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Don't do it. Oh, no. Good old Christopher Biggins. I mean, wow. That's shocking now, isn't it? I imagine at the time.
I was quite shocked by the fact that I was going to fuck my mother. When that scene was shown in America, they had to cut me going on top of her because the Americans couldn't take it.
I, Claudius, caused outrage.
In those days, there was an establishment that decided what the public could watch, whether it was on the theatre or on TV. There was genuine fear that this might corrupt the poor people for whom we are responsible.
Zuzi!
The whole series was shocking. I mean, you know, what John Hurt did when that terrible scene.
Yes, even Biggins is shocked by this terrible scene. Incest, infanticide and cannibalism. That's going some.
I must draw the child from the Queen of Heaven's womb and swallow it whole, so that a new child may grow out of the head of Zeus. There'll be no pain, I know it.
Pain? But why should... Caligula?
We are immortal gods.
Too late. This man is mad. Like, literally evil.
Don't go in there.
Critics were up in arms at first, but changed their tune when it became clear that amidst all the controversy, this was classic TV drama.
It had been criticised heavily, and they said, this is terrible television, really bad. And then they changed their minds, and they said, this is great television, which of course it was.
I should have killed him when I had the chance.
You can't do the PG version of the story of Caligula. It treated extreme themes.
I think the public loved the fact that it was gory, it was sexy, there were orgies. It was all justified by the fact that, well, it happened 2,000 years ago. And it was real, you know, this really happened. You have to sort of steel yourself to watch this dreadful stuff. And they watch in their millions.
In 1976, I, Claudius, was water cooler TV, or would have been if they'd been a thing at the time. Another drama scheduled for transmission that April was even more extreme. So much so, the BBC decided it couldn't be shown.
I'm a huge Dennis Potter fan. What he was able to do with TV drama was right for the time and hasn't really been bettered since.
Celebrated dramatist Dennis Potter had been asked to write a script for the Play for Today series. The result was Brimstone and Treacle.
We made it, and it was a lot of fun to make.
Well, good heavens above.
What is it?
My, how are you?
Yes, I
Oh, you've forgotten me, haven't you?
No, it's just that I...
It is about a young man
Yes, I have so much fat.
who pretends he's an ex-boyfriend of a couple who are grieving for their daughter who'd been disabled in a motor accident.
It must be a terrible shock for you to see her in this condition.
The young man cons his way into their house
Hello, my darling Patricia.
and turns out to be the devil.
My pulse, like a soft drum, beats my approach, tells thee I come. And slow howe'er my marches be, I shall at last sit down by thee.
The devil was essentially a fairly normal-looking bloke. He wasn't covered with scales. He didn't have horns.
Well, I'm very glad you're here now. Aren't you, Tom?
What? Oh, yes, of course, I'm very...
Would you care for a cup of coffee, Mr.
Oh, please call me Martin.
To me, that was more frightening.
Shortly before transmission, the BBC got cold feet and pulled this devilish drama. Dennis Potter wasn't entirely happy, as he memorably recounted on the South Bank show.
Alistair Milne, who then was director of television, saw it and announced that it could not be shown.
It does seem hilariously last minute, doesn't it? We've made this thing and it's incredible. We've paid everyone. Actually, let's not put it out.
Suddenly, put it crudely, they were shit scared of this piece.
What especially had BBC management really scared was the scene when Martin, a.k.a. the Prince of Darkness, rapes the helpless Patty in the family's front room.
Now the time has come to see what will happen twixt you and me. You'll find the devil is hard to beat. You're at his mercy, my little sweet.
The shocking part was the abuse, which was horrible.
If you are a nervous type out there, switch over or off for some calmer air. But you have to be smug or very frail to believe that no man has a horn or tail.
This is a completely helpless individual. It's disturbing. It's still disturbing to watch.
You messy little missy. Daddy'll have to smack your body for you, won't he?
Yes, he will. Daddy will have to smack your pretty little bum.
It is an abuse of power, and people do find that very, very difficult. And it's male power over female.
Shocking then, and more so to a modern audience, was the idea that being abused by the devil somehow cured Patty of her disability.
Patty!
Shut up!
The devil, how should we put it, sexually brings her back to life. That was that story. When people say, why was it banned, I tell that story and it tells them.
What happened, Daddy?
Alistair Milne described it as being nauseating.
Nauseating is not the word that I would use for it, but it's dark and it's disturbing.
Here's an exasperated Dennis Potter on the reason for the banning.
I then had a letter from Alistair Milne saying that although it was well made, well written, it did not have a point of sufficient importance to justify the outrage it would cause.
And I went to Milne, and Milne was saying, well, the thing is, Ken, I don't like this play. It's diabolical. And we thought, well, it's about the devil. It would be.
Which one? Which one will it be?
The band, Brimstone and Treacle, gained instant notoriety. Though a cinema adaptation was made in 1982 starring Sting, it wouldn't be until 1987 that the BBC finally showed the original version.
It must have been very frustrating for every single person involved, because it's not an immoral tale. It's an interesting tale, but it doesn't necessarily celebrate the devil or whatever the BBC was worried that people would think it would do. But it's enormously powerful even now, and it's a fantastic piece of writing.
Recorded TV can be pulled at a moment's notice, but a live transmission is trickier to control. And in 1976, that fact led to a legendary X-rated confrontation.
Over the last 12 months, punk rock has become almost a battle cry in British society. For many people, it's a bigger threat to our way of life than Russian communism or hyperinflation.
The arrival of punk rock in 1976 in Britain was no real surprise, because you kind of felt that something was growing.
Punk was an incredibly liberating force if you were 17 and skint in England in 1976.
The young kids of today, they're frustrated and bored. They're sick of being pushed around.
We regard ourselves as disgusted people, disgusted with a lot of things that are going on around us, which is possibly reflected in the music.
It's actually music born out of a frustration to get something across.
Outside hotspots like the King's Road in London, punk had remained largely under the radar until one of the most incendiary TV appearances ever.
The thing that really made punk explode into the public consciousness was, of course, the famous, infamous Bill Grundy interview.
Thames TV's Today programme was on at 6 o'clock every night, and on the 1st of December, someone from the EMI press office called me up at 5:30 or something and said, the Sex Pistols are going to be on.
The Sex Pistols were only on it because Queen had cancelled. He was supposed to be interviewing Queen, and they pulled out, so they got this band that no one had heard of.
They are punk rockers. The new craze, they tell me. They're heroes, not the nice, clean Rolling Stones.
The Sex Pistols were there to shock. I mean, their whole appearance, whether it was swastika armbands or pictures of Karl Marx on this shirt, and they had both, and hammer and sickles, and it was anything that would upset kind of Middle England.
You see, they're as drunk as I am. They're clean by comparison. They're a group called the Sex Pistols.
Poor Bill Grundy. It's never a good idea to drink at lunchtime. We've all done it, but not when we're about to broadcast live on national TV.
I am told that that group have received £40,000 from a record company. Doesn't that seem to be slightly opposed to their anti-materialistic view of life?
He's just goading them, and he's calling them the group. He's talking more to the camera than he actually is to the four Sex Pistols.
He's the grown-up in the room, by the way.
I want to know one thing. Beethoven, Mozart, Bach and Brahms have all died. Really? What are we saying, sir?
Wonderful people.
Are they?
Oh, yes, they really turn us on.
What do they do? Well, suppose they turn other people on.
It's just their touch, isn't it?
When this first bit of swearing goes on and Lydon says shit, and then Bill Grundy says, what's that? And he goes, oh, nothing.
It's what?
Nothing, a rude word.
It looks like a naughty little child.
Next question.
No. What was the rude word?
Shit.
Was it really? Good heavens.
That appearance on the television was like putting two electric shock things to the head of the nation. It jolted Britain.
Always wanted to meet you.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We'll meet afterwards, shall we?
You dirty son. You dirty old man.
And he goaded them into swearing and saying a few more shocking things.
Well, keep going, Chief, keep going. Go on, you've got another 5 seconds. Say something outrageous.
You dirty bastard.
And he's provoking these kids, essentially. Go on, say something rude. So they did.
Go on, again.
You dirty fucker.
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
What did you think they were going to do, Mr. Grundy? You know, he was trying to look kind of cooler than they. And, of course, he just looked like an oaf.
It did obviously create this colossal furore.
The moral panic that followed the Sex Pistols' appearance on that television programme was quite extraordinary.
They were on the front page of every national newspaper the next day. And for the next week, lorry drivers being so furious that they kicked in their TV.
The whole thing has been created out of the media, but like it's got out of hand, and the media now don't know what to do with it. They can't cope with it.
The papers, they don't know what they're talking about. Half of them have never even been to a concert.
And right across the front pages, it said the filth and the fury. The Sex Pistols kind of paid the price for that in many ways. They literally became kind of public enemy number one.
Are you a punk rocker, madam?
No, I'm not. I like old-time dancing.
They say there's no such thing as bad publicity. The Pistols quickly discovered there is.
As a result of it, the Sex Pistols tour, which is about to start, they were banned from almost everywhere they were supposed to play. It was extraordinary, really.
I will do everything I can to prevent certain groups from ever appearing in London again.
Johnny Lydon got attacked in the streets and beaten up, and as did half of their followers. They had people outside concerts praying with holy Bibles because they were seen to somehow be the work of the devil. At that time, to decide that you were on the side of the Sex Pistols was a bit like saying, come and beat me up. On a regular basis.
If we get a bit up for it, that's bloody hard luck, you know. We're never going to back down.
Music and maybe Britain changed forever thanks to a few moments of white-hot controversy.
I actually still think that punk and 1976 was the point that the future started, that a very, very different Britain began to emerge.
And further rocking our world in 1976, three icons are about to get us all talking. One spreading peace, another spreading hate.
Is so shocking and so disgusting.
While the third spreading stereotypes.
And it makes you want to jump on a chair and scream.
We're taking another look at the controversies that had us all talking in 1976. That year, a shot was fired in Kingston, Jamaica. The target was one man, but the entire world heard it.
I think in some ways you've got to understand that when there was that assassination attempt on Bob Marley, they were trying to kill, probably, at that point in time, the most famous person on earth.
By 1976, reggae pioneer Bob Marley had become a global superstar, promoting unity and peace.
Oh my gosh, Bob Marley, Buffalo Soldier, Dreadlock Rasta. His songs, the message, and how it was commercial, but at the same time, it was...
At that time, in Kingston, Jamaica, there was a big gang war going on. And which gang you were in determined which political party you supported, kind of left or right. And there was a big concert coming up where Bob Marley had called it a peace concert, and he wanted to get the heads of the two parties, Manly or Siago they were called, and therefore the gangs that sort of attached themselves to them, and he wanted to get them together and try and bring peace.
The precise root cause of what happened next is still unclear, but elements wanted to stop the concert, and that meant stopping Bob Marley for good.
2 days before the concert, some armed gunmen burst into his house on Old Hope Road in Kingston, and they just opened fire.
I remember Donald Kinsey, the lead guitarist, telling me how scary it was. It was just like these loud sounds of fire coming into the studio. They were just recording and listening to some music.
Bob had a shot whiz across his chest and lodge in his left arm. It was there for the rest of his life, in fact.
Our manager of Soul to Soul, Don Taylor, he was in the room when the attempted assassination happened. They actually shot him. They were in the recording studio, and Bob had got under the recording desk.
When they ran out, leaving him, they also fired several shots at the VW Beetle of Rita, his wife, which was leaving, and a bullet whizzed past, creasing the side of her head, but she managed to drive off all the same.
Unbelievably, nobody was killed.
Apparently, the gunmen, they were like young, they were like 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids who looked terrified of what they were doing.
And when they were put on trial, they said it was the CIA that had paid them to get rid of Bob Marley.
To be honest, people still aren't entirely sure about why they were trying to kill him. Some people have said it was a CIA plot. Some people have said it was a robbery that went wrong. Essentially, I think it was just to do with the gang dynamics of Kingston in that period of time. And Bob Marley was seen as being on the wrong side by some of them.
Most people would lie low after a murder attempt. Not Bob Marley, whose next move cemented his hero status forever.
Marley, injured, couldn't play his guitar. They said, don't do the concert. He went and he did it anyway. And he did an hour and a half on stage, and it was an amazing moment because it was something that was supposed to be a huge tragedy that one side could blame on the other, and it turned out to be an incredible triumph for Bob Marley to say, against all advice, 2 days later, I'm going out on stage, I'm going to stand in front of 80,000 people, any one of which could be armed, and I am going to perform. My voice isn't going to be silenced.
While 1976 saw Bob Marley promoting peace, in Britain, racial tension was being exploited for political gain.
They've opened the floodgates of our country to an invasion.
That year, the openly racist National Front were landing big successes in the ballot box.
One of the things about this period that I think is now quite hard to appreciate is that the politics of the far right were crackling away inside British popular culture.
How's Britain's first?
An already toxic situation was inflamed yet further by a shocking onstage rant, not from a racist politician, but a previously well-respected musician. A man whose repellent opinions seemed totally out of step with his own musical influences.
Eric Clapton was a global musical icon who had his roots in the blues, which is really a music that came out of black people in the United States of America. It came out of that struggle for equality. It came out as a cry against segregation.
Do you know who you're supporting?
When we hear what he said at that concert, we're absolutely shocked.
In 1968, far-right politician Enoch Powell had given his incendiary Rivers of Blood speech.
In 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
Now, 8 years on, Clapton echoed those poisonous thoughts with a diatribe that retains the power to chill.
Drunk on stage, declaring that Enoch is right and they, whoever they might be, should all be sent back home.
Immigration! No! Repatriation!
This was a man who played the blues, and yet he can stand on stage and come out with putrid racist filth.
Imagine the shock that people like me felt when the guy who was singing I Shot the Sheriff just a few months before was standing on a stage in Birmingham and lauding Enoch Powell.
Is so shocking and so disgusting. He says what any target of racism has heard all their lives.
There never has been, and there never will be, a coloured Englishman.
You don't belong here, we don't want you here, go back to where you came from. As soon as he made those comments, people who worked around him in music and as organisers and promoters thought, hang on, that's not right at all.
As a result of that, Rock Against Racism started, and it became such a powerful movement.
And they began to put on carnivals, gigs, events, which were about celebrating rock and pop musicians against racism.
There was black and white people with fists like this, shouting, "Black and white unite."
Clapton had wanted to stoke division, but unwittingly, his controversial rant created unity.
It became a global movement of very famous, very, very powerful and influential artists saying, no, excuse me, we don't believe in that at all. We believe in anti-racism and solidarity and fighting to create a less bigoted world.
In a way, even though I was horrified that it was said, I'm glad that he said it, because something really positive came out of something pretty vile.
TV, as in music, racial tensions could erupt from the most surprising places. In 1976, with the BBC's help, a comedy legend made a misjudgment so serious his reputation is still tarnished.
My final guest tonight was born in a military hospital in India. One of the few men in the world who can impersonate Kojak with the aid of his right knee and a false nose. Ladies and gentlemen, Spike Milligan.
Spike was an anarchic comedy genius.
Having survived the war, having lost most of his friends in conflict, he saw the world as a very foolish, upside-down sort of place. So for the rest of his days, he just sent everything up.
Now, this uniform goes back to Moss Brothers tomorrow.
Yes, sir, there's a deposit. There is a deposit on it.
Oh, that'll brush off. Don't worry about that.
Spike was a comedy innovator, from The Goon Show on radio to TV's Q. The BBC were happy to indulge his every crazy whim.
And now, an edit in the tape. Another edit in the tape. Yet another edit in the tape. Saved by death.
Spike was one of those guys who kind of, if he'd got an idea, the BBC would probably be likely to commission it with John Cleese and a few others like that. Oh, Spike's got a new idea, let's have a go.
But in 1976, Spike Milligan's new idea was for a series so alarming, it never saw the light of day and still retains the power to shock.
You look now and it makes you want to jump on a chair and scream.
OK, here we go. Spike's big idea was called The Melting Pot. The premise of the pilot show was that Spike and co-star John Bird were newly arrived Asian immigrants. See where this is going?
Remember, we must not order any curry. That would be a dead giveaway.
You just want to cover your eyes and ears and make it go away. Where do you even start? Let's start with the makeup.
The notion was problematic, but it was still being done.
At the time, programmes like the Black and White Minstrel Show were still Saturday night favourites. But with The Melting Pot, the blackface makeup was just the start of the problem with this car crash comedy.
Everybody in everything that Spike ever wrote are idiots, and everybody in The Melting Pot is stupid.
He just decided he wanted to have a go at everybody. But, oh no, don't do that.
A pilot episode aired in summer 1975, and here's the level of humour on offer. The two main characters think a betting shop is a restaurant. The joke being they're too foreign to know otherwise.
What do you recommend?
I'm very rarely disturbed by old clips I see, because I grew up at that time watching a lot of stuff I found uncomfortable.
Peace on you.
Don't you start piecing on me, mate.
The way that the man behind the counter is shouting at them. You just know how that would have been viewed, which would have been an invitation and a licence to mock and jeer and abuse immigrants on the streets of Britain.
Now, do be nice to these two Kaffirs, even though they're not British like us.
In the final scene, most of which is untransmittable today because of the language being used, the two main characters meet their fellow guest house residents.
What a mixed family. The mother must have been a very sporting woman.
Oh, yes. Mostly overseas by the look of it.
Wow. That's quite heavy. That is really heavy.
Down the crowds, look, it's the two bungs who tried to eat the winner of the 3:30.
Seeing actors playing black up and then they're then taking the piss out of their culture. You know, no wonder you're, you know, you've left your country because it's so overcrowded.
They're overcrowded in their own country. They come over here. First thing you know, they overcrowd the lounge.
They crossed the line. I think they took it too far.
I think Milligan is trying to say something about multiculturalism, but it's absolutely impossible to see that because of the grotesquerie of what's going on. You just cannot get over the racism of the humour.
I don't know what they were thinking, and I find it astounding that that pilot got made.
Nothing should astound you about 1976 by now, but it was made and transmitted.
The critical response to the pilot is pretty catastrophic. Clive James, when he reviewed it for The Observer, just said it defeats all criticism. He called it a fart accompli, like it was just an escape of something foul and noxious.
And if you want truly astounding, a full series was commissioned for 1976.
5 more are made. The rest of the series does get taped.
But the mood was already changing. This was mid-70s by now. People were beginning to think, you know, is this right?
At which point the decision was made that even in the age of the notorious Love Thy Neighbour, this was beyond the pale.
Somebody in the BBC decides that this just cannot go out.
Even in 1976, when a lot of racist and homophobic comedy was rife, it was deemed too much.
The full series was never transmitted, and although eventually Spike Milligan distanced himself from it, it still leaves a stain on his reputation.
You will never see this on BritBox. It is, I think, in a way, still considered something that has to be locked away.
Shocking? We haven't even started. Coming soon to a screen near you. Jodie Foster in her most controversial role.
You're meant to worry for her. You're meant to be disgusted.
And did one movie that year show an actual murder?
I didn't see it because I was slightly worried it was.
We're digging up the controversies that made 1976 such a shocking year. And while TV might have pushed boundaries, cinema smashed them to pieces.
The mid-70s was an era where people were trying to outrage, and often for good political reason, to try and stir up anger and discussion and debate about things.
But in 1976, a film was released where the aim was to cause outrage full stop. Its title was Snuff.
There was a lot of discussion at the time about so-called snuff movies.
Yeah, snuff film is where you witness someone being killed for real. In the film, snuffed out, I suppose, is where the snuff comes from. It's just the darkest thing. Why would you want to watch that? I'm a huge horror fan, but the beauty of horror is you know it's not real.
The film Snuff was actually a film called The Slaughter initially, which was inspired by the Manson murders.
Low-budget exploitation horror film made in South America about some people who had taken into a cult and murdered.
The original version of the film had bombed. A cunning plan was needed. The film's distributor, Alan Shackleton, had heard about snuff movies, so rebranded this as the genuine article.
You two go and show him. And then decided to re-edit it and release it under the name Snuff by inserting a piece of footage which purportedly showed members of the crew murdering a young woman. So the idea is the film is then interrupted by a real, in inverted commas, snuff movie.
What are you doing? Are you filming this?
Predictably, word of mouth and appalled publicity did the rest.
He didn't actually say, you're going to witness a real murder in this film, but also didn't say, this fake. Kind of let the headlines do the talking and just said, oh, I'm not going to say one way or the other.
I didn't see it because I was slightly worried it was. So the publicity around it was good.
So it generated a lot of headlines, it generated a lot of controversy, a debate, discussion. Is this real? Isn't it real? Of course it's not real.
Snuff may have been a fringe movie, but 1976 also saw a mainstream release, hailed then as an instant classic, but which would never be made in the same way today.
In Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro plays Travis Bickle, who is Army veteran, was in the Marines.
The film is about an unhinged vigilante, really, who's a taxi driver in New York.
And this is 70s New York, which was a tough place.
Who's got a radio? Here. Who's got a radio? Nobody. Nobody.
The violence is increasing, and in the city where there are 4 murders a day, they're now thinking of the unthinkable, laying off policemen. New York just can't afford them anymore.
Bankrupt financially, morally. Travis Bickle is an insomniac, so he spends a lot of time driving the streets in his taxi at night, seeing things that upset him, disturb him.
All the animals come out at night. Whores, skunk pussies, buggers, queens, fairies, dopers, junkies.
And he becomes this sort of clean-up campaigner, really. I'm gonna clean up this place, get rid of all this scum.
Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets.
The US film censors were so shocked by the graphic content, it was at risk of an X-rated certificate and commercial death.
Scorsese actually had to change the colorization of it, the saturation of it, I think, to make the blood look slightly less vivid.
But the biggest controversy around this film, I think, was regarding the casting of a 12-year-old Jodie Foster.
You've never taken any acting lessons, have you?
No.
Why not?
Well, I don't think it's necessary if you have some instinct and if you're doing okay. I think maybe I might when I'm like 18, 20 years old.
Jodie Foster was renowned in the 70s for giving performances way beyond her years, so she was a teenager. She was a young girl in those years, in the 70s, but performed with such maturity.
And here's why they wouldn't make Taxi Driver in the same way today.
Jodie Foster was only 12 years old when she was hired to play a teenage prostitute.
You looking for some action?
Yeah.
The camera kind of frames her much as it would an adult woman. Everyone in the film treats her almost like an adult woman.
The part was, in fact, so adult that the labor authorities in Los Angeles, who control youngsters in feature films, insisted that Jodie should go to a psychiatrist to see if playing it would damage her.
What quality is it that Jodie has that you find so particular and remarkable?
There's a scene she's eating at a luncheonette with Robert De Niro, and there's a sexuality about it, and at the same time, a childishness.
Her entire demeanor was incredibly sexualized. She was wearing very tight, skimpy clothing, little T-shirts and skin-tight, sort of flared cords.
In a later making-of documentary, Jodie Foster gave an unsettling account of her feelings at the time.
I remember being just completely embarrassed. They made me wear these clothes that I would never wear, you know, hot pants. And I remember at one point, you know, sort of starting to cry and going, you know, I can't believe I have to wear this awful clothes. And my mom said, you know, this is only a character, it's only a part.
On set, Jodie always had her mum as a constant chaperone.
Every step and move in Jodie's career is watched over by her mother, Brandy Foster. She's always on the side, never far away from any situation that affects the daughter, who has now become a property to be protected.
She is just, she just has an exceptional character. And I'm not worried about her development at all.
And Sister Connie stands in with the full approval of Jodie and her mother for the sexier and more explicit scenes in some of Jodie's films.
But even with mum and sister on set, there was no escaping the extremely adult scenes that Jodie was playing at such a young age.
The main scene where she's taken Travis to a room and, you know, he's paid for her time and he just wants to talk to her. But you can hear, like, school children outside.
Are you really 12 and a half?
Listen, mister, it's your time. 15 minutes ain't long.
It's obviously near a school, and you just think, that's where she should be. That's her world, not in this world, you know, of pimping and prostituting.
What are you doing?
Don't you want to make it?
No, I don't want to make it. I want to help you.
Well, I can help you.
Damn, man.
It's disturbing to watch, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be an inappropriate relationship. You're meant to worry for her. You're meant to be disgusted.
And the winner is Jodie Foster for Bugsy Malone.
If ever anything summed up the differences in attitudes in 1976, it's a 12-year-old cast as a prostitute in a major film and winning a BAFTA and Oscar nomination for it.
I don't know if Taxi Driver would be made today because of Jodie Foster's character, because of her age in it.
No, what you get now is an adult that plays kids.
It was so controversial at the time, but it still would be, because it's completely outrageous to expect a young actress to fulfill that role.
There was outrage then, but this was outrage pre-internet. I think the outrage now would just be so much more intense.
Scene one, take one.
And don't forget to put your clocks forward tonight, as you won't want to miss when 60s TV goes horribly wrong tomorrow night at 10:25 right here on Channel 5.